In the beginning, before anything existed, there was God, eternal, powerful and full of purpose, and he created the heavens and the earth, light and darkness, land and sea, and everything living within it. And at the center of his creation, he made humanity, not by accident but with intention, creating Adam and Eve in his own image, giving them freedom, purpose, and a perfect relationship with him. But that relationship was broken when sin entered the world, when humanity chose their own way instead of trusting God. And from that moment, pain, death, and separation became part of human life. Yet even then, God did not abandon his creation. Instead, he began a long and powerful story of redemption, choosing a man named Abraham and making a promise that through his descendants, all nations would be blessed. And from Abraham came a people, Israel, whom God guided, protected, and taught through leaders like Moses, who led them out of slavery in Egypt, showing that God is not distant, but a deliverer, a rescuer who hears the cries of his people. And through laws and commandments, God showed humanity how to live, not to control them, but to guide them toward a better life. Yet people continue to fail, turning away again and again. And throughout generations, prophets were sent, warning, guiding, and reminding people that God had not forgotten them and that something greater was coming. And then, at the right time, everything changed. God entered the world in human form through Jesus Christ, not as a king in power, but as a servant in humility, teaching about love, forgiveness, mercy, and truth, healing the broken, lifting the weak, and showing what God is truly like. Not distant or harsh, but close, compassionate, and full of grace. Yet despite his goodness, he was rejected, betrayed, and crucified, and in that moment, it looked like darkness had won. But his death was not the end. It was the turning point, because through his sacrifice, the barrier between God and humanity was broken. And 3 days later, Jesus rose again, proving that death does not have the final word, that hope is real, and that new life is possible. And after his resurrection, he gave a mission to his followers to share this message with the world, that anyone, no matter their past, can be forgiven, restored, and brought back into relationship with God. And from that moment, the message spread across nations, carried by ordinary people whose lives had been transformed. And the Bible continues by showing how this message grew, how communities were formed, and how faith began to change lives across the world. But the story does not end there, because the Bible is not just about the past. It is about now and what is still to come. It speaks of a future where God will restore everything, where pain, suffering, and death will be gone, where justice will be complete, and where those who trust in him will live in peace and joy forever. And at its core, the Bible is not just a book of rules or history. It is one story, a story of love, of a God who created, who pursued, who forgave, and who made a way for humanity to come back to him. And that invitation still stands today, not based on perfection, but on grace, not based on what you have done, but on what he has already done. And the question the Bible leaves you with is simple. Will you respond? Will you trust? And will you step into the story that is still unfolding? And as the message of Jesus continued to spread, people from different nations and backgrounds began to believe, not because of force, but because they saw lives changing. They saw broken people becoming whole. They saw hope where there was once despair. And this message was simple yet powerful, that no one is too far gone, no one is too broken, and no one is forgotten. And through the Holy Spirit, God's presence was no longer limited to a place, but living within people, guiding them, strengthening them, and transforming them from the inside out. And this is where the Bible shifts from just history into something deeply personal, because it begins to speak directly into the human heart, into fear, anxiety, purpose, identity, and meaning. It shows that every person struggles, every person falls short, but also that every person is invited into grace. And throughout the letters written to early believers, we see encouragement, correction, and wisdom on how to live in a world that is often confusing and broken, reminding us that faith is not about perfection, but about direction, not about never failing, but about continuing to return to God. And as time moves forward, the Bible points toward a future that is not uncertain, but promised. A future where everything wrong will be made right, where justice will not be delayed, where tears will be wiped away, and where suffering will not last forever. And this hope is not meant to escape reality, but to give strength within it, to remind you that your current situation is not the end of your story, that what you are facing right now is not permanent, and that something greater is still ahead. And when you step back and look at the Bible as a whole, you begin to see that it is one continuous story, not random, not disconnected, but intentional. A story of creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. A story that begins with God creating a perfect world and ends with Him restoring it again. And in the middle of that story is humanity, searching, struggling, failing, and being called back again and again. And in the center of it all is Jesus, not just as a historical figure, but as the turning point of everything, the one who bridges the gap between broken humanity and a perfect God. And this is why the Bible matters, not just as a religious text, but as a guide, a mirror, and an invitation. A guide that shows a better way to live, a mirror that reveals the truth about ourselves, and an invitation to step into a relationship with God. And this invitation is not limited by your past, your mistakes, or your current situation. It is open, right now, to you. And maybe you have felt distant. Maybe you have questions. Maybe you are unsure. But the message of the Bible remains the same, that God is not far away, that He sees you, knows you, and calls you by name, and that your life has meaning beyond what you can currently see. And so the story continues, not just in pages, but in people, in lives being changed, in hearts being restored, and in moments where hope rises even in darkness. And now the story includes you, because the same God who created everything, who guided generations, and who sent Jesus, is still working today, still speaking, still calling. And the only question left is, what will you do with this story? Will you ignore it, or will you step into it and discover what your life could become?